Hello! Welcome, come in and take a seat. I'll put the kettle on. Milk and 2 sugars, was it? Okay, let's talk about Pokemon. I dabble in Gen 1 solo runs in my free time, and recently got to wondering if I could do one with this guy. Of course, this guy isn't in the game, so I set out to fix that. As it turns out, thanks to some very clever people, doing such things is actually pretty easy. A few hours of tinkering later, and the job was done. And so, here we are with, as far as I know, the world's first Pokémon Red Lugia solo run. Here are a few notes on the rules for this playthrough before we get started. This is a solo run, so only Lugia is allowed to battle, and the challenge is complete once the player enters the Hall of Fame. Other Pokemon are allowed in the party, but only for the purpose of using HMs. I also won't be using any healing items during battles. Aside from the addition of Lugia and its signature move, the game is completely unchanged. So let's take a look at this run. I get my starter Pokemon Lugia, and my rival selects a Squirtle. Before he can smell me later, we're going to have a quick battle. Lugia comes with just one move initially, its signature move, Aeroblast. Aeroblast lands a critical hit and takes Squirtle down in 1. Let's have a chat about Aeroblast. The logical Gen 1 interpretation of this move is frankly a little too good. You see, Aeroblast comes with a very respectable power of 100, but also has an increased chance to land a critical hit. There are already 4 moves in the game with an increased critical hit ratio, and these are Crab Hammer, Karate Chop, Razor Leaf, and Slash. And for all of these moves, the chance of a critical hit is multiplied by 8. Critical hit ratio is also related to the speed stat in Gen 1, and without getting into all the numbers, basically, Aeroblast on Lugia gets a crit 99.6% of the time. In Gen 1, crits also ignore stat boosts like Defense Curl. Aeroblast is also a flying type move, meaning Lugia gets same type attack bonus. The only downside is its max PP of 5. While we're talking about moves, I want to quickly go through the rest of Lugia's Learnset. As Lugia was introduced in Gen 2, the basis of its moveset will also come from Gen 2. Gen 2 Lugia starts with Aeroblast, which is also its signature move. Signature moves are pretty common in Gen 1, for example Spore on the Paras line, Twin Needle on Beedrill, and Crab Hammer on the Krabby line, so I went ahead and included Aeroblast. The next move on the list is Safeguard, a move that protects the user from status conditions for 5 turns. This was also not in Gen 1. I thought long and hard about this one and even spent quite a long time trying to add it into the game, but eventually decided to swap this out for Mist, a move it would ultimately gain access to in Gen 8. Gust, Recover, Hydro Pump, Swift, and Whirlwind are all Gen 1 moves, so these get to stay. Rain Dance at level 55 is out, since the concept of rain in battle was not yet a thing. Finally, Ancient Power and Future Sight are both Gen 2 moves, but since they are learnt at such high levels, there was no need to consider these. So, our final learn set looks something like this. Of course, there are also TM and HM moves, which I'll show briefly on the screen now, and I'll talk about the logic behind each TM decision as I use them in the run. With that out of the way, I've arrived at the first gym in the game, and my Lugia is currently at level 6. Going into this battle, despite the level difference, I'm feeling very confident. After all, we saw what Aeroblast did to Squirtle. This should be a walk in the Safari Zone. And then this happens. Ah! There is one thing I hadn't realised about Aeroblast until this point. Unlike in the modern games where Aeroblast does special damage, in Gen 1, all flying type moves do physical damage. This means we're up against Geodude's rock hard defense stat of 100, rather than its special stat of only 30. The icing on the cake is that both Geodude and Onix resist flying type moves. Lugia is now out of PP, but thankfully there is always Struggle. So maybe still some hope for getting to part 2 of this battle? But alas, the normal type damage of Struggle is easily resisted by Geodude. Lugia faints, and my eyes stop functioning. Soon after, I find myself at the nearby Poké Center. So time to get training. I take down every available trainer to me, including the optional rival fight. I try again against Brock at level 10 with no luck. And after some wild Pokemon training, I return to the gym at level 12. By this point, Lugia has also learned its second move, Mist, which makes it more difficult to access Struggle. It takes 3 attacks to bring down Geodude, but I did come prepared. During my training against wild Pokemon, I whittled the PP of Mist down to 5. The idea is to use Mist to prevent Onix from charging up with Bide, use my final 2 Aeroblasts for damage, and then finish the battle with Struggle. This is a pretty slow strategy, so I'll speed the video up here. Eventually, it does the trick, and the first badge is mine. However, I'm pretty disappointed to see that it took over an hour for Lugia to complete the first gym. There must be a better way. So, I actually restarted the game at this point, determined to clear Brock's gym in a shorter time. This time, I complete the optional rival fight to avoid backtracking later and proceed to steamroll my way through to Pewter. I take down the trainer in Brock's gym and grind for EXP in the Viridian Forest. This is a frustratingly slow process, as Lugia can only win a maximum of 5 battles before needing to visit the Pokémon Center again. My plan is now to defeat Brock using only Aeroblast without relying on Struggle. This means I'll need to fight at an even higher level. My first attempt is at level 13. I take down Geodude in 2 shots, looking good so far. But Onix is 4 hits to KO, meaning I won't have enough PP. I do a little more training and come back, still at level 13, but with enough EXP that Lugia will level up after defeating Geodude. Once again, Lugia smashes through Geodude in 2 shots, reaching level 14 in the process as planned. 1 Aeroblast, this looks good. 2. And 3 seals the deal. With Brock defeated a whole 5 minutes faster than last time, I teach Lugia Bide, and now the real journey can begin. Just a note on TM34 Bide, Lugia has access to this TM as all Pokemon that can learn TMs in the game can learn Bide. Honestly, I was pretty surprised it took this long, but Brock was a real sticking point for Lugia. I definitely feel the second method was the way to go. It may have only saved 5 minutes, but Lugia came out 2 levels higher in the process, which may help it out down the road. And while we travel down Route 3, I'll take this opportunity to quickly talk about Lugia's special stat. As you may know, the first generation of games had a stat called Special, which was immediately split into Special Attack and Special Defense in the subsequent titles. So, when adding Lugia into the game, how do we figure out what Lugia's special stat should be? Well, thankfully, there are some clues that lead to a clear answer. The first big hint comes from how the first 151 Pokemon were reworked in Gen 2 to have split special stats. When this was done, the Gen 1 special stat was always, without exception, reused as either special attack, special defense, or in some cases, both. So following this logic, we know that the special stat must be equal to either the special attack or special defense of Lugia in Gen 2. 90 or 154. The next clue comes from the other legendary Pokemon. When we look at the base stat totals of the legendary Pokemon, we see that they fall nicely into 2 groups. Since we know that Lugia's base stat total must be the same as Mewtwo's in Gen 1, its special stat is 154, which matches its Gen 2 special defense. Alright, back to the run. I catch myself a Spearow for Fly, and soon arrive at Mount Moon at level 16. To conserve PP here, I run away from all wild encounters. I defeat the mandatory rocket and have just enough PP to take care of the fossil maniac before choosing the best fossil. I have one last item of business here, which is to catch a Paris, which will be my cut and dig user later on. Now I need to make a choice between fighting Misty first or going up the Nugget Bridge to tackle Rival 2. I don't expect to have much difficulty either way and opt to visit Misty. The Staryu is easily taken care of with one Aeroblast. Starmie actually outspeeds Lugia and then survives the first attack, but a second blast easily secures me the second badge. Unfortunately, I couldn't justify giving Lugia access to the Bubble Beam TM, so we're stuck with these moves for a little longer. After healing up, I move on to the rival fight, and Pidgeotto goes down in 1. Abra also goes down in 1. Aeroblast misses once against the rat, but quickly takes care of it on the second try, and Squirtle is also easy work for our legendary Sea Bird Thing. Finally, we're seeing what Lugia and Aeroblast can really do. After an early mishap at the first gym, things look like smooth sailing from here on. And speaking of smooth sailing, let's skip ahead to the boat party, by which time Lugia knows Gust, and we get access to a great new move in Body Slam. Body Slam was a short-lived TM in the series, featuring only in Gen 1 before finally making its return in Gen 8. As a result, Lugia never had the chance to learn Body Slam from TM in Gens 2 through 7. However, if we take a look at TR01 in Gen 8, Lugia can learn Body Slam here, and since this was the first chance Lugia had to learn the move, it follows that it would likely be able to use TM08 in Gen 1. Alright, let's go see our rival again. Aeroblast for Pidgeotto. Aeroblast for Raticate. Body Slam for Kadabra. Aeroblast for Wartortle. Can somebody get me an easy button, please? After watching the SS and leave, I teach Cut and Dig to Paris and proceed to take on the Electric type gym. With only 1 PP left on Aeroblast, I opt for Body Slam against Voltorb. This leaves Voltorb paralysed. Voltorb screeches at me, but it fails, and Lugia jumps on Voltorb again. Next up is Pikachu, a rather obscure Pokemon that not many people have heard of. This guy goes down after 1 Body Slam. We go for Aeroblast against Raichu. Not quite enough. Thundershock, no problem. Body Slam. Okay, badge number 3. Lt.Surge kindly presents me with the TM for Thunderbolt, which I immediately teach to Lugia in place of Bide. Wait, Thunderbolt? Really? Yep. Lugia didn't have the chance to learn Thunderbolt in Gen 2 via TM, since the TM didn't exist. However, the TM returned in Gen 3 and Lugia was able to learn it. Also, Lugia can learn Thunderbolt in Gen 2, thanks to a move tutor in Pokémon Crystal, so there is nothing strange going on here. The next stop is Rock Tunnel, which I'll be walking through in the dark since I don't have Flash. Here there is just one trainer that poses a threat, and that is the Hiker with his team of 2 Geodudes and a Graveler. I come into this fight poisoned from a run-in with an Oddish. With no great move choices for dealing with rocky Pokemon, I opt for Aeroblast, which unfortunately fails to bring down Geodude in 1. Geodude does the job for me, knocking off a chunk of Lugia's HP. Against the next Geodude, to conserve those Aeroblasts, I give Body Slam a try, but the damage is underwhelming to say the least. Geodude throws some rocks, which Lugia does not like. I then opt for an Aeroblast, hoping this would finish it off, but Geodude hangs on in with a Sliver. I finish it with Gust, but now I'm going into the Graveler fight, poisoned with only 38 HP. Aeroblast misses, and Graveler throws some rocks. Aeroblast does do more than half, but that was my last one. With no PP left, I have no choice but to use another move. I go for Gust, and get a crit, but Lugia is on its last legs. And finally, Lugia is defeated. For the first time since Brock, it has met its match. So we try again. And again. And again. And this time, I start with Body Slam, hoping that Geodude might just self-destruct again. It goes for Defense Curl, never mind. Now I go for Aeroblast, and this time it actually does do enough damage. The fight with the second Geodude unfolds much in the same way, and this leaves me with 2 Aeroblasts for the Graveler. There's one. Okay. Now we can skip ahead to Celadon City and the Rocket Hideout, where I finally get access to a couple of PP ops. Naturally, I use both on Aeroblast. At the bottom of the Rocket Hideout, Giovanni leads with Onix. 1 Aeroblast. And 2. Next up is Rhyhorn. 1, 2. And Kangaskhan. 1, 2. So no one-hit KOs here, but fairly straightforward. I buy some drinks, and a small child gives me the TM for Ice Beam. I get the HM for Fly, and teach it to Spearow. And during a short trip to Saffron City, Lugia finally gets access to the move Psychic, making use of its primary typing. TM29 retains its role in Gen 2 as Psychic, and Lugia can learn it. Rival 4 is chilling in this creepy tower, so I decide to hit him up for a battle. Needless to say, this was not a difficult fight. There is nothing much else worth talking about at the Pokemon Tower, so let's skip ahead to Erika. And with her out of the way, I wake up a Snorlax, go for a bike ride, and have a chat with Koga. Okay. After a visit to the Safari Zone, I head over to take on the Silph Co portion of the game, where our rival is once again waiting. He leads with Pidgeot. Lugia uses Thunderbolt. Another Thunderbolt for Growlithe. Can we scramble eggs with Aeroblast? Yes we can. Body Slam isn't enough to defeat Alakazam, who uses Disable on Lugia's Thunderbolt. Thunderbolt is instantly re-enabled, and Alakazam loses to a second Body Slam. Blastoise tanks a Thunderbolt and retaliates with Water Gun. And with one more Thunderbolt, Rival 5 is defeated. I get Lapras and head over to Giovanni. Psychic makes short work of each of his Pokemon. And speaking of Psychic, let's head over to Sabrina's gym. The first Kadabra falls to a single Body Slam. Mr. Mime bravely takes a Body Slam, but fails to take a second. We zap the bug, and this surprisingly took 2 shots as well. Then Harace gives Lugia a little trouble with Recover, but has no chance against the physical power of Aeroblast. Next up is Blaine, and due to Lugia's slow leveling rate, we can start to see that Lugia might be a little under-leveled here. The Growlithe and Ponyta are easy work, but Rapidash takes 2 attacks to bring down, this could possibly have been dealt with via Aeroblast, but then we see the level 47 Fire Doggy take an Aeroblast and live to tell the tale. And for some reason, I decided to switch to Body Slam here, which fails to get the job done. Finally, with a Thunderbolt, the 7th badge is mine, so it's time to go and find out who the mysterious 8th gym leader is. Oh, Giovanni, what are you doing here? Okay, Rhyhorn goes down to a Psychic attack, as does Dugtrio, Nidoqueen, Nidoking. Okay, Rhydon will take 2 shots. Wow, I thought I was going to get a clean sweep there. Still, a very easy battle. So with all of that out of the way, it's time to get into the serious fights, starting with another rival battle. As usual, we both send out our birds and I go for a Thunderbolt. But this time, it's not enough. He goes for the best healing item in the game, and I take that chance to zap it one more time. Rhyhorn is up next, I go for Psychic. I don't have any great moves to use against Growlithe, but I go for Thunderbolt, and it almost does the job. Eggs Benedict. Next is Alakazam, and this takes 2 Body Slams. And surprisingly, Blastoise survives a Thunderbolt. So not a super difficult fight, but also not a clean sweep of one-hit knockouts either. Now we'll skip ahead to the Indigo Plateau, and I'm going to empty out my party except for Lugia, which is currently at level 44. While in Victory Road, Lugia learned Hydro Pump, which I decided to delete Body Slam for. Now considering the last Pokemon in the league is level 65, I'm feeling a little underleveled here. The endgame time is currently at 3 hours and 31 minutes. I decide to feed all of my rare candies to Lugia, which pushes it up to level 51. And now it's time to take on the Elite Four. So first up is Dewgong. My plan is to spam Thunderbolt in this battle, since most of her Pokemon have the water typing, and Dewgong is no exception. Dewgong takes the first hit, and she drops a Super Potion, before Lugia tidies up with another Thunderbolt. Cloyster is up next, and Thunderbolt crits to take a one-hit KO. I decide to try an Aeroblast against Slowbro, but it falls short and Slowbro goes for a defense boost that isn't going to help. Thunderbolt cleans up. Next is Jinx, and I go for an Aeroblast, but it misses, and Jinx comes back with an Ice Punch. The next Aeroblast does the job, and out comes Lapras. Lapras is pretty tanky, and I doubt any of my moves could one-hit KO here. But I go for Thunderbolt, and it does decent damage. Lapras responds with a Blizzard that almost knocks Lugia out, and with a final Thunderbolt, the first member of the Elite Four is defeated. I use a full restore and sit down with Bruno. As everyone knows, Bruno is a big pushover. I'll show a very quick summary of this battle on screen, and then we can move on. Okay, Agatha. This shouldn't be too tough since Lugia has Psychic, but you can never be too careful with Agatha. Gengar comes out, and quickly goes away. One down. We take advantage of Golbat's flying typing with a Thunderbolt. Haunter, Piece of cake. Psychic for Arbok. And Psychic for Gengar. Will it be enough? Yes, nice, a clean sweep on Agatha. Now at this point I went ahead and taught Ice Beam to Lugia in place of Thunderbolt. And just for transparency, Ice Beam is another tutor move in Pokemon Crystal that Lugia has access to, as well as a TM that was absent in Gen 2 and returned in Gen 3. Deleting Thunderbolt may have been a mistake, as we'll see straight away here with Lance. Lance leaves with Gyarados, and I stare at my move list for a moment in disbelief that I deleted Thunderbolt. This was probably not a great idea. I opt for Aeroblast, and as expected, it wasn't enough. Gyarados responds with a Dragon Rage, knocking off 40 HP, and Lugia finishes it off with an Ice Beam. Next up is Dragonair, and this is a cinch thanks to Ice Beam. And the same for the next one. Aerodactyl shows off its impressive speed stat by getting off a Supersonic, leaving Lugia confused. Lugia proceeds to attack itself, then receive a takedown, then attack itself again. Finally, we land an Ice Beam and Aerodactyl is no more. And as expected, Lance's Ace Dragonite is no match for Lugia's Ice Beam. Okay, final battle. Our rival, John, sends out Pidgeot, and since Thunderbolt is gone, I go for Ice Beam. Pidgeot holds on with a sliver of health before sending my Ice Beam back at me. Another Ice Beam and Pidgeot is down. Now it's Alakazam, and finally we get to see the animation for Aeroblast. Yes, I reused the animation from Hyper Beam. It just made the most sense. Rhydon doesn't like getting wet. I forget that I have Hydro Pump and use Aeroblast. Its takedown misses. Another Aeroblast, and it's done. Aeroblast for Exeggutor. Okay, last Pokemon, Blastoise. Once again, I look through my move list hoping to find Thunderbolt, but it's not there. Never mind, it only seems fitting to finish this run with one last Aeroblast. Not enough! Blizzard, that's gonna hurt. Okay. No! You've got to be kidding me. Frozen Solid. So in Gen 1, if your Pokemon is frozen and you can't use healing items, it's pretty much game over. There's no defrosting in this game unless you happen to get hit by a Fire-type move or Haze. All I can do is wait for the cruel hand of defeat, and it soon comes in the form of Blizzard. That was so close! So I didn't actually save during the league. Basically, I'm following J Rose's example here and trying to beat the league without saving in between, so I had to start again. The first 4 battles played out pretty similarly to last time. I just made one small change. Instead of deleting Thunderbolt for Ice Beam, this time I deleted Hydro Pump. As a result, Gyarados was a one-hit KO, and the battle with Lance was pretty smooth from there. Going into the champion battle again. This time I use Thunderbolt against Pidgeot and it drops in 1. Alakazam falls to Aeroblast. Rhydon doesn't get wet this time, but it doesn't like the cold either. Fire Doggy is still a pain and I can't fall back on Hydro Pump either. Exeggutor. And we're back to the Blastoise fight. Okay, let's finish this up in one Thunderbolt, no messing around this time. And it goes for Blizzard, and I have a terrible feeling. Yep, it happened again. This is rotten luck. Okay, one more time. Same strategy, third time lucky. I hope. Pidgeot is down in one again. Alakazam 2. Rhydon. I go for Psychic this time with Fire Doggy. Exeggutor. Blastoise. Right, come on, Thunderbolt. Critical hit, yes! Finally! And so that was the Lugia solo run. And we're coming out with a time of 3 hours and 45 minutes. Aside from a slow start, it pretty much flew through the whole game. For reference though, I'm able to complete the game in under 2 hours with Mewtwo. It was certainly not anywhere close to what Mewtwo can do here, even with the same base stat total. We might get closer with a better starting move pool, possibly if it started with a water type move. But of course, Lugia was never designed to be used at such low levels. In Gen 2, the lowest you will ever encounter Lugia is level 40 in Silver. Anyway, thank you so much for tuning in and watching until the end. Please let me know what Pokemon you'd like me to do next in the comments. If you'd like to see more videos like this, please consider subscribing, and lastly, it would be great if you could use one of the thumb-shaped buttons to let me know if you like this video or not. Is the tea ready yet?